Cool. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Move, Breathe, Live. And today I am super stoked to welcome, I'm going to say my friend who weirdly we converse via, as is the standard these days, converse via Instagram a bunch. And she says and shares some lovely things about me, which is very kind of her. But this is Hannah Barrett, who is a yoga teacher from down London way. And I've been following her. I don't know, our joint friend, Sarah Rouse, kind of introduced us. And ever since then, I think we've just been kind of, I don't know, following each other and commenting and stuff. So I don't know if you, obviously, as a quick thing, Hannah's kind of a bit croaky today, losing her voice a bit, but I'm going to throw it over to her and make her do all the talking. And maybe she can just introduce herself a little bit for us, and then we can get dived in from there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I am super croaky. I've lost my voice. It's not COVID though, so that's good. And yeah, so I must have met Sarah because we had our babies within days of each other. That was Amelie. So and that was like over 4 years ago. So
yeah.
And then I think she shared something of yours, and I'm super inspired by your practice. Sorry, I'm really excited to be speaking to you today. And what about me? Okay, I'm a yoga teacher, but I didn't always do yoga. I actually worked in finance for nearly 10 years. I have a maths degree. I'm an actuary. And then I had my first boy, Jack, who is now 6.5. And I reassessed life and thought, do you know what? I'm going to just go for it and follow a passion of mine and see if it works. And it did. I'm here now and I'm a yoga teacher and I'm loving it.
And so with that, were you practicing yoga prior to Jack, or were you one of those people who kind of, let's go and do some pregnancy yoga, and then actually it's really helpful?
No, so I was practicing before. I was one of those, I used to love the gym, and I used to complement my gym practice because I realized I was really unflexible. I couldn't even touch my toes. So I used to complement it with like a yoga class a week or every few weeks, or like it was not regular. And then when I was when I got engaged, it all happened really quickly in terms of the engagement and then getting married and then having a baby, actually, because me and my husband have known each other for a long, long time. I think we were together for 9 years before we got married. But during the lead up to the wedding, I was super stressed. So then I started like a regular yoga practice, and then I started a daily yoga practice, and then we were so lucky to get pregnant really quickly, and I just kept that daily practice going. And I always what made me fall in love with yoga and get my daily practice was self-practice, obviously, because you can't go to yoga class, but I still love self-practice, and I don't classes are a treat now, but I still, it's all about self-practice, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm very similar to that. So literally since I came back from India, but even before that, so I haven't done a lot of talking about on this podcast about yoga, weirdly, considering I'm mainly a yoga teacher. But so I kind of been practicing yoga for like 15 years. And apart from when I was in Canada and I was regularly going to a yoga studio there, I'm in the arse end of Suffolk, and me and Sarah, we both qualified about the same time, which was now 7+ years ago. But we were really one of the first, I'm gonna inverted commas here, guys, go younger yoga teachers. Before that it was just super, you could probably count on one hand the amount of yoga teachers in Suffolk, and they were all kind of gentle hatha, middle-aged, for want of a better word, sort of older lady hatha class. And I never went to practice. I still basically don't go to any classes. For me, it's all just self-practice. I do some online stuff, of course, but essentially all about self-practice. And I kind of feel it's in London, I'm assuming here because I've never lived in London, but it's so much options, so many classes you can go to, so many studios you can choose from, that it's really easy to always have to rely on a class to go to rather than getting up, getting on your mat, doing it yourself.
Yeah, there's so many benefits of going to classes, and I've got a funny story to tell you in a minute that just popped into my mind. But yeah, there is something different about having the discipline to get on your mat and practice and get away all of the distractions. It's really hard. Especially I've got obviously 2 kids now, so they're like the biggest distraction. But the funny
3
story I
dogs.
was just thinking of when I was like, I'm gonna tell you about this, is so weird. But another Instagram friend, my friend called Jen, we were meeting up in central London, and we were like, let's go to a yoga class. Really excited about it. Okay, we're going to meet up in Soho. That's like the middle area. So I was like looking for Google reviews, because since lockdown, I don't know many teachers that are still teaching at the same studio and stuff. So I was looking around. So I sent her a few ideas, and then I was like, oh my God, this studio's got amazing reviews, like all 5 stars. Anyway, I was like, where is it? Okay, let's see if there's a class we can go to. It was a naked man's yoga class.
Oh, amazing. That's why I got 5 stars.
I really wish that I'd accidentally not looked into it more and just gone, let's meet here, and walked in and gone, oh God.
Can we leave our clothes on? No? Okay, cool. We're in.
It's so funny. Anyway, that was a really random, bypass story.
And so with like around, like obviously from there, prior to ever going and teaching, you were obviously practicing and built up a solid practice. So when did you go into teaching then?
So my son was like 6 months when I decided I was like, I'm going to do a teacher training. And so I did a year-long one, because I was like, I can't do any intense one with a little child. So yeah, I qualified when he was about 1.5. And then halfway through that, one day randomly, me and my husband was talking. He was like, you should start an Instagram account. And that's where it all started. And I started being called Yoga Girl London, but have since changed my name, my handle, which works. I remember people now know what I'm called.
I remember that now. I can. And you have currently, I'm just going to have a very quick look, because I can't quite remember. I'm sure you probably do know, but you have got a lot more than me. You've got currently sitting at 364,000 followers, which is pretty reasonable. Pretty reasonable. And so your training, did you go, I mean, anybody who, obviously I'm going to put all your stuff for people to follow, but you're quite a, what would be the word? I forgot, I can't get it. It's on the tip of my tongue. But your flows are quite kind of intuitive and quite kind of flowing, I guess, and not particularly any, you don't do an Ashtanga practice or anything like that. But was your practice just in Vinyasa, or were you, did you have a practice beforehand, a lineage type thing?
I always loved Vinyasa flow. I trained in Ashtanga Vinyasa actually originally. Like I was looking for a training, it was an all-rounder, so I could get a bit of everything. And that's when I decided that I had a passion for anatomy. So then I did another training with Lara Hyman as lit yoga, and I had that training. Although I don't officially teach lit, that's massively informed my practice, just the way I sequence and the way I teach. But like, it's funny, and I go in like waves. You must do this as well, like where I'll do loads of power and I'll be really into the power, and then I'll just be like, no, I need the calm, I need the restoration.
I am 100% that. I was a Ashtanga Vinyasa like training in India, and I want to kind of chat about that and just throw some ideas around of like intense versus non-intense, because I've definitely got some thoughts around it. But it nearly broke me doing like 4 weeks of just like strong practice. Like, I mean, I had a reasonable, I probably practiced 3 times a week and doing an Ashtanga practice, but I don't think I realized, because that was just a self practice, I didn't have someone pushing me and standing on me and whatever else. God. And so like after the 4 weeks I was broken, like, and then I stayed in India for another, I was out there for 6 months, but I stayed for another month, and I didn't want to do any physical practice. Do you know what I mean? I did yin. I had the biggest class they'd ever had as a drop-in class at the studio by teaching yin rather than Ashtanga. And then,
interesting.
I know. To me, that said an awful lot about a lot of people.
For sure.
And then I just spent the rest of the time with my meditation teacher, and I was kind of like, this is what I want to do. This is what, and then, there's just these ebbs and flows of, I don't know. I guess that's kind of life though, isn't it? I think that's unfortunately, as yoga teachers, we're often, or as yoga practitioners, I think we often don't accept what our body, like, you know, the ebbs and flows of like the seasons, like gets to this time of year and you know, everything slows down, everything gets darker, cool. And then quite why we still think we need to beast the crap out of ourselves is, yeah.
I just saw one of my friends just posted on Instagram about does mindfully brushing her teeth count as yoga? And I was like, it's such a good point, because what is a yoga practice? It's all about this idea of self-study. And if we're pushing ourselves on our mat, like if I today got on my mat and did a really intense hour-long yoga class, that's not right for me. That's not yoga. I'm not like honoring myself. It's this balance between effort and ease. What I need right now is that ease. That you want to teach me yin, because that sounds lovely. But yeah, it's like, what is yoga? And actually, yes, meditation is a huge part of the practice, right? And actually, we just were talking about COVID before we came on here, and I got COVID in March last year, and I just was drawn, my yoga practice was a meditation practice. And I was just like, I had such bad anxiety. It piped up just because of COVID, but also the worry. I had it really badly. And I just suddenly thought, shit, like if my parents get this, if my in-laws get
especially
this,
that time of the year when it was, do you know what I mean? It's not quite this same, well, you know, I don't know, I don't think I've said on any of these podcasts, we know what we're getting now, whereas like over a year ago, it was kind of very much like a scary place to be, do you know what I mean? Especially with relatives and things. For me, during my COVID, like it was a pranayama practice, it was just a breath work. Like I teach breath work on our membership, and I was deliberately just being selfish, but doing things that I felt I needed in those classes. And it made huge amounts of difference. Post like doing breath work for half an hour, I had way more energy. I had like my sinuses were clearer. I felt more alert, awake and stuff. And yeah, I think it's so easy I practice yoga, inverted commas again, guys. And just like, you know, it's handstands and forearm stands. And it's like, you know, and going into your Instagram practice, one of the things I like about it though, is it's not your Instagram yoga practice. It's not like, let's do handstands, you know, and it's kind of like very much, I kind of feel same thing as me. It's like a strong anatomy.
I'm good. Okay, I'm gonna have to pause a second. I realized I locked the dog in the room next door.
That's all right.
Sorry,
we won't pause. You can just run off and let the dog out. I've got two dogs in here.
Okay, sorry. I was like, I can hear him. Where is he? I'm so sorry, buddy. Hiya.
Mike, I've got one down there. Look, it's Douglas down there. Hanging out.
Okay. What were we just saying about? What were you just talking about? Because I was like, yes. You were just talking about
your yoga practice and not being all handstands.
I don't know if you feel this as well, but I've been saying this to a lot of people at the moment, is that when I joined Instagram, it was a very, very different landscape. Then there were much less people doing what we do. And it was all beautiful photos, very artistic, but I was like, oh my God, I'm so intimidated. And I was a yoga teacher who could do lots of stuff that would intimidate other people. So my kind of thing is like, look, I don't want to be an influencer. I want to be, and there's nothing wrong with being an influencer. I'm not saying there is, but I want to be a yoga teacher. So let's show people how to actually do that. If they want to do these crazy poses, let's show them how to do that.
Yeah. And with you, I mean, like you said, you've obviously been and then studied with Lara. Is it Lara? Not Laura.
Yeah, Lara Hyman. Yeah.
Lara Hyman. Yeah. So a bit like me, kind of, you're constantly dragging in way more modern anatomy into your practice and into your teaching and into your posts, which again, you know, I've been a big fan of people like Patrick Beach and Dylan Werner and stuff and whatever else over the time. But again, it's kind of very much, and even like when I first started, you know, Keenan McGregor was probably the main person yoga teacher. Too. And it was just like, you looked at her thing and it was like handstanding on a beach with a beautiful sunset, and it was a handstand in an airport with like, and you know, everything was just handstands and whatever else. And to me, like, I can't handstand still, like, you know, I'm super hit and miss as to whether I can or I can't. And
me too.
Yeah, I super quickly got pretty bored of like, just trying to put my handstand practice online. And actually, I feel like the whole probably, like you've just said, but the Instagram world has kind of diverted of like, there's still an awful lot of very beautiful people doing very beautiful poses on very beautiful beaches. And then there's a bunch of other people who've gone, actually, this is a pretty helpful thing. And we've kind of, has been hugely beneficial for me. How can I put something into helping people?
Yeah, because the point that you said earlier about as well about being really selfish and doing your breathing practice, I don't think that is selfish. I think often what we need, other people need as well. I often do, like at the moment, I keep asking people how they are on Instagram, like on Instagram, and how, whether they're feeling tired, because I'm feeling tired, and more often than not, like the majority is like, yeah, I'm exhausted. And
yeah,
so
yeah, I mean, I literally put something out the other day about the change of the season and how come autumn, like it's almost, and I asked Andrew Huberman, like that neuroscientist, on he did like an Instagram live or something. He was talking about like light and how we can use light to be more awake and go to bed, and all this kind of, and I said, so does that mean that really come autumn, winter, we should be like almost like hibernate, we should be getting up later? He was like, kinda, yeah. Like we can't really do it because of societal norms, but actually physiologically that's probably what we should be trying to do, which kind of was pretty interesting to me, because actually no one seems to want to do that.
Oh, I would love to do that. I'd love to do that. I'm not having to get my kids to school in the dark and pick them up in the dark. Oh, can I just say like something randomly? I've just realized that my secret is out in terms of in the background. Can you see that I've got a Christmas tree
all up? Yeah. Was that from last year?
No, it's not from last year. I put it up yesterday. I have a friend who's crazy about Christmas. And she's like, I'm doing mine. And I was like, you're crazy. And then I was like, I'm going to do mine.
Whatever. It's been up all year, Hannah. Come on, it's been up all year. Don't give us that.
I've just moved into this house. So
have you? It's a lovely house. So as far as like just going back to what I said earlier about yoga trainings, because this is something that my wife's a teacher too. And so we trained in different manners. So she did hers over a year, I think it was, like a weekend every like month or whatever it was, to make her 200 hours. Whereas I went to India and did like a full bore, like intense thing. And it's and we've kind of hummed and hawed and discussed about the pros and cons of it. And actually, I don't know what, obviously you had your Jack as a small baby and stuff, so you couldn't just go off and like do a month's intensive. But what are your thoughts about these? Because obviously there's still a lot of people who talk about want to go off and do teacher trainings and everything. And I know I've got my thoughts, but I'd be interested to know what yours were.
I think it completely depends on the person. So you threw me into a month-long teacher training, it wouldn't have been the right thing for me. You have got the element, particularly if you're training in Ashtanga, like, I don't know, so I was Ashtanga Vinyasa, so it wasn't quite an Ashtanga practice, although we did do that. If you're doing that every day, it's really intense for your body. And there's a whole other conversation about whether it's right now, what we know about science and anatomy and stuff. But I think it just depends. And it's great that there are so many options now that you can do it over a month, over 6 months, over a year. The benefit of doing it over a longer period of time is you have more time to absorb it and to digest it and to figure out what you love. Because I think if I'd learned everything in a month, and you can say how you felt, but like then going into teaching, I would have been like, oh, deep end. But then, maybe that's a good thing. Like we all have imposter syndrome, right? Like whether we're good enough. I
mean, it's still 100% there in my head 7 years later. I mean, I kind of, so I did it and I found I came home, but I struggled in a way to integrate all of these like thoughts, feelings, like all the emotions that had come up during my training during this really intense time. And I went and traveled. So I had 6 months in India. So I took 6 months off work, and I then did all of this intense yoga, and I traveled and I was doing yoga practice every day, and I was doing yoga at different schools and throughout the whole of India. And I came home, and then I had like this, it was like I was gutted or something. Like I had no idea how to put into practice what I just done, because life was so different from India to England, from a month's intensive every day teaching, also teaching people who know yoga, who know how to move. And like one of the biggest things, and again, you're London, so it might be a bit different, but like for me, coming back to Suffolk, like nobody's done yoga. Like everyone, like I'm really fortunate. I have the client base and student base I do, but none of them really ever practiced yoga before. And so therefore you go from like, we're going to teach you how to do, I don't know, some crazy pose in the Ashtanga series, like I've forgotten what it's called. Yeah, something like that. Or what's the one where Eka part, I don't know, where you go into half lotus with the bind and fold forward. It's gone out of my head now. Whatever that is, stuff like that. And then you come home and then all of a sudden you've got like people from the ages of 20 to 60 and they have no idea how to move, and they've definitely not done half lotus forever. And then but you've spent the last 6 weeks teaching all the time, and you're like, well, there's no one.
And also not seeing anyone else. Like obviously I saw other people, like that is not, it's not normality, is it? You're in an amazing situation, but it's not normality. Yeah, it must be a real shock. Actually, I imagine people like do find it a little bit traumatic coming home and adjusting back. It's like people go on silent retreats and stuff. And
no, 100%. I mean, so Jen did hers South London way, and you know, it was, and she would come home and like we would discuss it. She had like a week, she had like like 3 weeks or something to like do more reading into like the philosophy side or into the meditation side, and immerse herself more in it for a longer period of time. And I just think I don't know, I kind of hum and ha about doing a teacher training. There's no way I would do an intensive. I'm not sure I really, I don't know, would want to do a 200 hour as such, but like, I don't know. It's a tricky one, but I definitely think from my perspective now, spreading things out longer is probably a better way to allow a teacher to become a better teacher, a better rounded teacher.
I was just thinking that the second training I did was like a 10-week affair, so like 2.5. I think it was actually split over 3 months, and that was digestible. But obviously, it was my second training, so you go in with open eyes, like you know what to expect and everything. Yeah. And like when I did the year one, I don't know if your wife was told the same, but we were expected to practice 6 days a week, and that was okay because it was self-practice in a way. We didn't have to look a certain way. But if you're in a teacher training, you're doing the like full-on classes, which usually are like an hour and a half, right?
Well, some of they were definitely like the Ashtanga practice was like, because we did Ashtanga 5 days a week, and then on the 6th day we did like just a vinyasa like flow, like hips or spines or something like that. And perhaps we can dive into a little bit of this actually with like
it was a proper Ashtanga class, or you did 5 days running?
5 days a week.
I've never done this before. My body would break. Like
honestly, my knees felt like they wanted to die. My knees felt horrific. I mean, I even at one point was texting my cousin's husband, who's a physio, being like my knees feel like funky type thing, and he was like, oh, it shouldn't be anything like dangerously bad, but you probably just need to rest up. And but you know, we've kind of mentioned just now, and we're not going to go into whether it's good or bad, but like you know, with something exactly, with something like Ashtanga, you know, I think you've got to be so careful as to what your body can do. And I think this is, again, going back to our point of what is yoga, is whether you've got croaky voice and you don't want to do a power class, you want to do a yin class, doing an Ashtanga class and actually realizing that there's poses within those sequences which are just not going to work for your body day.
And it is like we're constantly evolving, we are constantly changing, and what was good yesterday isn't good today. So I think like Ashtanga potentially isn't bad, but you have to have that connection to yourself, tune in and know, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because it's in a sequence and I'm being forced to? I actually need it? And it's difficult because it's a balancing scales, and sometimes we can just take the lazy road, right? And just be like, oh no, I'm going to put off doing that today because I'm not feeling like it. not because it's going to injure us, but because we're feeling lazy. So there's a either side of the scales.
Totally. And I think finding that, being able to find that balance of just like that tuning inwards, and really that, I mean, if we're going to talk what is yoga, that's
the
it,
practice.
isn't it? That is the practice.
Like conversation within, absolutely.
Yeah. And actually being like, do I want to do this? Not really. I can't be asked. That's like, okay, well, maybe I should just push through it. Or do I really want to do this? This is pretty fucking painful. Okay, let's step back and
let's modify.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's we won't get on to Bikram, but like just talking about Bikram for one moment, 1 second.
Come on, let's do it. Let's go deep.
So I'm pretty sure that Bikram's taught on a script. So I'm sure it's not just the studios that I went to. I accidentally bought a 10-pack. So I went quite a few times. And then actually I just didn't even do the rest of the classes. Bikram yoga is not for me. Hot yoga is not for me. But the way they teach is they get you into the most extreme version of the pose, and then you kind of ease it off. And you don't want to do that. You want to modify for your body, because we're not all the same. Like you and me know there are certain things in your anatomy that make one pose really easy for one person and one pose really hard for another.
Exactly. I mean, with like you on that, you just literally posted this week about poses which you're probably never going to get into, and like I replied and was just like, that is all me. Like that is all me. Like trying to do fire log / whatever it's called, or
it's like madness, isn't it?
Yeah, trying to do front splits or anything like along those lines. And you know, it's cool, absolutely, if you want to do those, but like knowing that you can't do them and going to a hot Bikram class or, you know, whatever else it might be, and having them, okay, Bikram, they don't force you into it because they don't leave their little stand, but you know, essentially, I mean, I find it crazy at Bikram you're not allowed to have a drink until like halfway through and stuff. That just blows my mind. Like it's just completely against, to me, what a practice is about. But
so the thing that did you just clap?
I did. It's just so I've got a little marker to know where to cut.
Okay, sorry, do it again.
So I'm just gonna leave it all in, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. So what was I going to say? So it's this idea of people who are super rigid, and it's funny, isn't it? Because yoga teaches us this Shatira Sukha, which is that balance in effort and ease and not being so rigid. So people who I struggle to understand people who are like, you've got to do it in first thing in the morning before sunrise. You aren't allowed to have anything to drink or eat. You know, all these rigid rules.
You have to face east, and you have to do this. Yeah.
Because I suppose like life has just changed, and the Ashtanga sequence, right, it was men that were doing it, young men with these narrow hips, and now we've got all shapes and sizes and bodies, and women and men, and like everyone's doing it, and we need to move. We need to know that life is really different now. It goes on to, you know, that age-old story, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system, and actually our stresses now are so much more. We are constantly being hit by stress. We're not being chased by saber-toothed tigers. We are being bombarded by work, by life, by technology. So we're constantly in this state of stress, and we can't just turn it off.
No. And then you expect your body to be able to go into this crazy pose with really high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, and you know, for one of it, those crazy little Indian dudes who, you know, had tiny little hips, and they were practicing from the age of, you know, 3, and you know, their entire life is that they have to squat on things, and you know, they're just, you know, sitting on a wall by squatting on it rather than sitting on a chair or whatever. Like their bodies were, for want of a better word, evolved to do those practices, and they had, I mean, I'm not saying they didn't probably have a hard life, because they probably did, but like, you know, 100 years, 150 years later, we have like excessive amounts of things driving stress into us, and to think that we can just do those practices now is madness. Yeah.
But also it's the other element as well, where you have these people who are giving you all of these rules, and it puts people off. It makes it yoga really accessible. It makes it this club that's like, you know, you can only join if you know what, you know. Oh, my dog, 1 second.
Yeah, go for it.
God, I'm not usually this
that's right, I like it being relaxed.
No, good boy. Good boy. There you go. You can have this. Good boy. Yeah, so it makes it really inaccessible to people. And I don't know if you know, but I'm releasing a book in January next year. And this was one of the things I really wanted to get clear, like, yoga doesn't have to look a certain way. You know, we've already talked about this. In fact, close your eyes. It's a sensation from within. It's not what your body looks like. But also there are a million things you can do to make it more accessible, even doing it in a chair. I do loads of corporate yoga, chair yoga, which I love because corporates often need it as well. But, you know, you don't even have to change your clothes. Anyone can do it. But also all these fancy words that you can hear, or even just, you know, the classic set your intention for your practice, which I'm sure you say sometimes and I say, but that used to freak me out at first. I was how the fuck do I do this? I don't know what's my intention. I've no idea. So just kind of breaking down all those things to make them understandable, because yoga philosophy is amazing. It's beautiful, but it can be really daunting. And it's like, well, actually, how we've changed so much. How does this apply to your life right now today?
And I also feel that you've got to, and this is where, you know, I don't know, found myself, but like, you have to, like, with philosophy and with that, like, you can't club people over the head with it, because, you know, there is some amazing stuff. There's some incredible stuff in there, but like with the movement, like, we're not in India, we don't come from that background, so you have to, like, ease people into, like, understanding and and let them walk that path themselves, like, and you know, I've definitely been to some classes where it's just like kind of smack you around the head with it, which is, you know, if you like it and you know it, it's cool, but to do it in just like the first class when people come in, I've definitely had people where they've come in to a well-established class and, you know, they've kind of just dropped in, and, you know, I've been talking about something and I can hear these two new people just like giggling and being like, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and then you know, they've never come back, which is, you know, that's cool. It doesn't bother me, but like, it's a kind of shame, because if they'd come to one of the other classes where it had just been movement and actually we just build up and you kind of get the hang of that, and then there's little bits and tidbits here and there to, like, you know, dropping the crumbs along the way to follow, then you can kind of get people around to actually having a really cool different perspective on life.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 2 points I want to touch on. I was just scribbling it down in case you saw me and wondered what I was doing. Yeah, I think it's the way you do it. If you have a group of people that you've been teaching for a long time and you've been dropping in some of the sutras or whatever it is into your classes, then you can do so much more and go into it in more detail because they're going to understand. But it's like making sure, and if you're in a class where people are always dropping in, that you're not just throwing these crazy words out there, and just, you know, because it is quite simple to just strip it down and say, like, this is actually what this means, or this is a way to apply, let's just say, satya, truthfulness. Are you being truthful to yourself when you think about what you're going to do today? If you're trying to get a million things done, that's not being truthful to yourself, and it's not going to make you feel good, rather than going into like a real like yogic definition, right? And then the other thing that I was saying is that the point that you made about people walking out of your class and people not liking you, I think it's a really important point for yoga teachers to just realize that not everyone is going to like you as a teacher, and that's okay. I've got many teachers I've been to their classes that I love, and then I've got teachers I've been to their classes I know other people love, but it's not for me. And we change. We're always changing. So a teacher that might not have been right for me is now maybe right for me, that kind of thing. But also not taking offense when someone walks out of your class, because for all you know, their father might have just died or something like that. You just got no idea what's going on.
No, definitely. That's and again, that's hopefully part of the journey we end up taking. Do you know what I mean? Of being able to go, okay, today wasn't the day for that person to be in my class. And does it matter a huge amount? Probably not. Like, if they find me again one day, amazing.
Exactly.
Cool. So let's move on from there a little bit. And for me, one of the cool things that I like most about what you do on Instagram, and I think judging by my stats of who listens to my podcast, it's obviously majority women, because I'd like to think that's the women want to come look at this, but we all know that that's definitely not true. As is the case with everything, like more women doing yoga these days and want to come and listen to such things. But you, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, I'm going to let you pronounce it because I definitely... Finola, there we go. Finola. Thank you. Who is a physio. The two of you do a lot of work together, and a big chunk of what you do seems to be aimed at kind of women, trying to help them either postnatally or even further down the line, or just generally with a lot of kind of women's health bits and pieces. So pelvic floor dysfunction, even just, I want to say, kind of awareness of what's okay and what's not for their body to be able to do and not do what's normal. Exactly. More inverted commas, guys. And so can you just dive into perhaps your thought process around this, and then also like how did you guys like come together and actually, because I think it's such a cool thing having the two of you work together.
Yeah, so there's two points to mine and Finola's relationship in a weird way. So I had my son first, and I got injured when I was doing my postnatal like strengthening, not through yoga actually, through like a postnatal kettlebell class. And I was like, this really annoys me. Like, I'm actually quite educated in my body, and I didn't understand the changes that happens after you have a baby. How can I help other people not do the same with what I did? How can I help people understand diastasis? Because obviously pelvic floor is a big thing, but also people worry about diastasis and that dreaded word mum tum. So I had met Finola, and I love Finola because she's a physiotherapist that will actually tell you what is wrong with your body, and she will tell you how to fix it. And the second part is really important, because I'd been to so many physios in the past who would like manipulate my body, maybe give me some exercises and stuff, but didn't really explain, actually, do you know what, don't worry, this is what's wrong with you and this is how to fix it. And just understanding that part of it. So that's why I really love Finola. And I said, look, I've got this idea, I want to create a postnatal program which is based around yoga, but also educates mums so they understand their bodies after having a baby. So we created a business, Strength Free Yoga. We created our postnatal plan, which was like a 16-week plan, which talked about all the normal, whatever conditions that people can suffer with, pelvic floor issues, prolapse, diastasis, even things like pelvic floor overuse, like an overactive pelvic floor, which we can talk about in a minute as well, because that's really common. Tears and things, like everything we cover. And then we're like, okay, well, what are the things? Because there are things you can do straight away after having a baby that will help bring your core back together and will help in your recovery. Like, obviously, I'm not going to get you to do burpees in week 1 of having a baby, but you can do your pelvic floor. You can start to think about how to re-engage your TRA, how to properly breathe, because breathing is so important. So we did that. And then I'm just trying to think when Amelie happened. So then when, I don't know if you know the story behind my daughter, but Amelie was born early. It was a very complicated pregnancy. It was a very traumatic birth. She spent 3 weeks in NICU. She nearly died, and it was awful. And so much of that informed what I was doing for mums, because I was like, you have to have that mind element. You can't just be like, postnatal is all about your body, because there's so much going on as new parents within your mind, and you have to look after your mind. Like, mental health is so important, and the message is being spread much more now, which is great, but there's still a lot more we can do. So we've got like mindfulness exercises and meditations and things within the guides. Did that answer your question? Sorry, I feel like
I think so. Yeah, no, I think you probably went through most of it.
Oh no, sorry, I want to add one more thing.
Go on.
Because when we started getting feedback from mums, and we talked on this, touched on it before we came on here, but it's about awful messages. It's this idea, the reason why I'm doing quotes around normal is that people are told, even by health professionals, that after they've had a baby, it's normal for you to wet yourself when you go for a run. It's normal for these things to happen. It's normal for you to have mum time and whatever it is, but it isn't normal. It doesn't have to be your new normal. And Someone even told me, and I've had a few stories like this, they were told by their GP, they were like, I really want you to, the 6-week check, can you please have a look down there? I don't think things are normal. It doesn't feel normal. And the GP turned to her and said, what do you expect? You've had a baby. Of course, it's going to be a car crash down there. And that is just disgusting. Like, that is just makes me so angry. Like, poor, like, how can we expect women to be empowered and educated in what they need? It's really sad, really, really
it's
sad.
Also, to me, it's like, and again, this is, you're on the same journey, but like, to me, the understanding of anatomy, but and I work, like we said, we might chat feet at some point, probably afterwards, but like, I followed Gary Ward's Anatomy in Motion. And to me, the idea of like understanding anatomy in motion, so not just cadavic, well, this is what happens, and you just had a baby, so everything's gonna be, but actually understanding how, when we move, when we're walking, running, whatever, how we can, yogaing, whatever, we can actually use our understanding of what bones, joints are moving, to how that's going to affect the musculature around it, and not just, well, you've had a baby, everything's moved, and that's kind of tough shit, so crack on.
Just figure it out by yourself. And
and I remember,
lots of people get back pain and all these kind of things. There are so many things that we can tell people to do that actually like strengthen your glutes, get your core working again as it's meant to, so it's anticipating your movements, things like that.
I mean, I remember like first reading one of Katie Bowman's books back in the day, like years ago. I read the Move Your DNA, and I think in there she comments, or one of her books anyway, she mentions about how it's, you walk into a supermarket and there's just aisles of nappies, and there's aisles of nappies for babies, and then you keep walking, and then there's like pads for women, pads for men, and she was a bit like, this is wrong. And it kind of, that really, tugged a string in my brain. And I've had women who, their kids are now like 21 plus, but they were my yoga students and stuff, and they kind of, and I started posting about some of this, and they were just like, can we have a chat? And literally, there in particular was one woman I can think of who, it's been like 20 odd years since she's had a baby, but she's had like stress incontinence since then. And it's just been, you've had babies, tough shit, get on with it. And actually we did next to no work, like you pointed out a minute ago, about like overactive pelvic floors. And I was just like, blah, blah, we discussed this a bit, tried to get her to relax, we moved her pelvis and her rib cage a little bit, just tiny little movements, but enough that it gave her pelvic floor some space to both be tense, but also be longer, and and
let's just add a bit in here to explain to people why this is really important. So our pelvic floor is like, sits at the bottom, like a kind of like a hammock in our pelvis. So if you have a pelvic tilt, it's not, the muscles aren't at that optimal length, but also we live in this world where we're constantly pulling in our tummies and like constantly engaging our core, which isn't good, because our core needs to anticipate our movement, so our pelvic floor needs to anticipate, but if we're engaging it all the time, it gets fatigued, so we can't use it.
And again, that goes back to, and it, again, not good, not bad, but the idea of, and one of my previous guests, Kendra, mentioned it, but the idea of like doing Kegels, like, they're not good, they're not bad, but if you spend your entire life doing nothing but trying to Kegel, trying to pull on, trying to strengthen, and you don't let it do the opposite, you don't allow the opposite to happen, then it's like doing anything. If you just do a one-arm bicep curl and you hold it forever, like, that's never going to be good for you. Like, you want it to be able to lengthen and shorten. And this woman 3 weeks down the line was just like, I cannot believe the difference. Like,
oh, that's so great.
You just really
changed her life, because you listened to her, like, she was heard, because we're not heard as women, as mums. Bloody hell, that's amazing.
And it's like, do you know what I mean? Something as simple as you say, of like an overly tense pelvic floor through whatever it might be, whether it be just constant Kegling, and you just end up like, and again, this is one of the things that you almost hear in an Ashtanga thing, is like,
I was about to say the same thing.
So in yoga, guys, there's you have like these locks, for want of a better word, called
Energy
like
locks.
called like bundas, and one of them is essentially your kind of a perineum, or apparently in America they call it a taint. I was listening to a podcast recently, and apparently that's the slang word, like a gooch, but like, for want of a better word, the perineum, the area kind of between your anus and genitals, that area there, and you're told to constantly draw it in and up, for want of a better word, of your pelvic floor through your perineum. And if you do this like all of the time, and you end up feeling and like, I need to be holding this in all the time, that's going to have a knock-on effect through everything, and how you move and how you are able to control the musculature in the base of your pelvis and stuff. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's such an interesting subject. I feel like we could do a whole other podcast on this.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
If you're always keeping it lifted, then because our abdominal cavity, our diaphragm is basically at the top, and when we breathe, the diaphragm's meant to go down. And if you're constantly lifting your pelvic floor, there's just going to be downward pressure. Like you can't what's the word I'm looking for? You can't constrict, that's not the right word I'm looking for, the abdomen basically. So it has to go somewhere, like it's like a balloon basically.
Oh,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean?
Like if you're pushing down and the pelvic floor is pushing up, then it's just going to essentially, it's like, I don't know, yeah, it's almost like pushing
like
your fist into the top of the balloon type thing. It has to go somewhere, and unfortunately most of the time it ends up pushing out
downwards. Yeah, exactly. And it's worrying that people are still getting told this. We really actually just need to be able to breathe properly and get our core functioning as it's meant to,
and really
not
that breath
having that
is...
time. I read a book. It was I can't never remember what the name is. I lent it to someone, I can't remember who I lent it to, but it was an Ashtanga book on pregnancy and how to adjust your practice if you are an Ashtangi. And it was interesting because it was like a different take on regular like pregnancy yoga. It was much more for people who already had an established practice. So I enjoyed it, but I had a whole section in it about birth stories, and I stopped reading halfway through because the birth stories were so traumatic. They weren't positive birth stories, because Ashtangis tend to have really tight pelvic floors and can't release. And when you need to have a baby, you need to learn how to release. Otherwise, there were lots of issues.
Be trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet. Well, so I mean, I just looked at the time. I can't believe we're nearly rattling through an hour already, which is crazy because it doesn't feel like we've even started. But yeah, so as far as strength through yoga, is that what you call it?
Strength through yoga, yeah.
Strength through yoga. Like, what do you like? You know, what are you putting in there? If people want to come and look at you, like, I mean, obviously, I'm going to put everything, and I'll ask you in a minute, but it's all going to go in the show notes. But like, what if they come find you? Like, what can women? Because it's going to be mainly women who probably come and look at this, but like, what can they take from what you and Finola.
So yeah, we've obviously got the postnatal stuff, but we did do another guide as well, which is a program for everyone. And like, so if you have injuries as well, because you know, often when people have injuries, they stop, and you know as much as me that stopping is not good for our bodies. Even if we have back pain, we need to carry on moving, for example. So strength through yoga is just a program for everyone, because we want to educate and empower people to understand their bodies better and to move better. But they're both e-guides. So if you work better with videos, then come to my app, Hannah Barrett Yoga. I've got loads of postnatal and flows for everyone on there. Different.
I was definitely going to just bring that up in a minute. Like, I mean, purely, I'm going to just ask this from, like, have you found that moving from, obviously you had a pretty decent YouTube following as well prior, but like, have you found that going over to the app has been like, has the feedback been really positive as far as how much people can get out of like you and what they can actually get?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been wonderful. Like I've got, it's been great, because now it's like, it feels like I love community. That's why yoga is amazing, right? That community feel. I feel definitely. Even though it's on demand and online, we have that feeling of community. And I've got this private group. If you're in the app, you can be in it whether you pay or not, because there's some free stuff on the app. And people are just so supportive. So I quite often do little challenges where people will win stuff. And I posted about winners, and like everyone's jumping on, like congratulating. And if anyone has any issues, people are like helping them through it. It's really lovely. It's really sweet to watch. And it feels like how it used to feel when I work at studios and stuff. Everyone feels like a team. It's lovely.
So are you doing any in person, or are you all online, all app stuff now?
So the only in-person class I've taught this year was Wanderlust, which is mental because there were 2,000 people there. I was meant to be doing some other ones. Like now I've moved out into Surrey, like it's not as easy. I never went back to the studio, actually. I just kept my online studio because I do some lives online. I'm hoping next year I'll be doing more live classes, because Wanderlust was amazing. You can't you still, like, within a Zoom room, you still do have amazing energy, but it's in real life, you can't really beat it. Like,
no, I bet. Amazing. I kind of just have just come back from our travels, obviously, and I hadn't taught anything live at all, like in person. I mean, I've done online and Zoom and stuff, but I hadn't done any in person. Then when I was in Cornwall, we went down to Cornwall to cover my friend Chloe's class while she was off having her baby, and it was lovely to be in person again. Like I'm a bit like you. I'm trying to grow my online thing, whatever. But I was a bit like, it's nice, like being in a. Awesome. Yeah, it was super lovely. So
the house that I've moved into, I'm hoping to do like weekend retreats here at some point next year, because it's like there's loads of green now. Like I'm not in the cement jungle of London.
Amazing. Cool. Right. So as always, we kind of tend to wrap up the last kind of 5 minutes of whether or not you can give any of my listeners, and hopefully some of your new followers, as they will be, any quick tips and takeaways that they can maybe use to like help them move, breathe, just to live a bit of a happier, healthier life. So
I can definitely. So my top tip is to get some kind of yoga habit, or to get some kind of positive habit going on. Get up and move. And that sounds really strange, but we live in a life now where still lots of us are working from home, and we work in one position. We're seated, probably with quite poor posture, but even if you have amazing posture, if you're not moving your body, that's not good. So keep getting up, even if it's just like a 5-minute dance around, do some twists, do some side bending, do some forwards bending, and maybe just open your heart. Like, basically, don't just go to one 90-minute practice a week and think you're going to be an amazing health. It's got to be like small and regular. And then also consistency is key, but also being real, being true. We talked about Satya earlier, being true to yourself and being like, okay, I'm going to try and do 10 minutes each day on my mat. And every hour I'm just going to get up and have a little walk around and have a little move. Because if we set ourselves huge goals, it becomes unachievable. So start small, but also remind yourself that rest is necessary. It's not a self-care. It's not like a being kind to yourself. You have to rest. So can you actually tune in and notice where you're doing too much? Because most of the time we are all doing too much. Can you pause more and find something you love, whether that's meditation, whether that's breathing, whether that's just sitting outside and people watching, whatever it is, just pause more.
Love it. Just pause more, guys. Just pause more. Amazing. Well, thank you. As a final wrap up then, so you've already kind of said your Hannah Barrett yoga on the old Instaweb. Is Strength Through Yoga as a page as well on there, isn't it?
Yes, Strength Through Yoga as well.
Cool. And then your app on the App Store or on Google Play or whatever is
Hannah Barrett Yoga. Just search for Hannah Barrett Yoga and you'll find it.
As you said, Hannah said, there's some free stuff on there already, but if you want to go and do some classes with Hannah, she has got a whole bunch on YouTube as well, which is just Hannah Barrett Yoga as well.
Yeah, right. And my book comes out in January. It's called Yoga Happy. But again, just search Hannah Barrett Yoga and you'll find it.
Perfect. Well, I saw you were posting about that the other day, so I'm pretty stoked to have a little read on that one. So thank you so much, Hannah. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I know we've kind of hummed and I've badged you a few times and then just been really shit and slack and forgotten to follow you up on it, but it's super nice to finally exactly, yes, it was ready for your book to come out in January. So thank you so much. We'll hopefully, maybe another time, maybe I'll try and do one with you and Finola, and we can maybe chat to pelvic floors for like an hour, because I'll be kind of keen for that. That'd be kind of cool. Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks so much. So great talking to you.
Cheers, Hannah.